On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, the Port of Baltimore has reopened. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So, big news happening on April 25th with the first vessels able to both leave and exit the Port of Baltimore. Here we're talking about deep draft vessels. So, for that report, we're going to go to one of our special friends of the channel, Captain Andy, the Minorcan Mullet himself, who caught the vessels coming out of Baltimore.
Okay, guys, sporty start to the day up at the Chesapeake, but breaking news, the first commercial ship that has been bottled up inside the Baltimore harbor departed today. The Balsa 94, she is a 347 foot long or 106 meter long ship, 62 feet wide, 19 meters wide. She was able to get out of the port today. She was being assisted by the Moran tugs, April Moran and Lynn Moran, coming down alongside the Dali inside of that channel that has been opened up. The Coast Guard is calling this the Fort Carroll channel, and they said that they were going to get this channel opened back up to ships down to a draft of 35 feet by the end of April. Guys, they're moving ships out of the port of Baltimore. Don John and Resolve have done a tremendous job here to get this part of the channel opened up. They're going to start moving some ships out of here. There's some rules. Of course, the tugboats have to be on these ships, moving them by the wreck site, by the bridge collapse, and they're not moving any ships if the wind exceeds 15 knots. And this has all been approved by the captain of the port with the Coast Guard and Unified Command. This is a very poignant moment in the reopening of the Baltimore Harbor, guys.
So if you don't know Captain Andy, head on over to Minorcan Mullet. I'll, of course, have the link in the show notes so you can go right to it. Captain Andy documented the entire event that took place down in Brunswick, Georgia, when the Golden Ray rolled over. He has come up to Baltimore. He has been capturing the event as it transpires here in Baltimore. If you want that firsthand perspective, he gets in there watching the cranes, watching the ships coming through. I called Captain Andy. He let me use the video, so I appreciate it and give full credit to him for this. He's got great video on it. What I want to do today is actually break this down a little bit more, talk about some of the background, what's been happening in the past. Let's take a look at those ship movements on marine traffic and see how they transpire. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So this video put out by the Unified Command, and in particular I want to focus on the area between the pillars where the channel is going to be. So this is April 4th, and now what you'll see is April 24th. So real quick, that large section of the bridge has been removed. So here's Dali. The southern pillar or piling, or the large V structure the bridge was based on, is over here on the starboard side of the vessel. You will also notice how the ship is missing a lot of the containers up forward. So about 137 out of 180 containers so far have been removed from the Dali. The next step here is going to be removing this section of the bridge from the vessel so that they can remove it. But the big issue has been the removal of the section here. This is the span that was in the water between the center part of the main channel up here to the northern pier. And what they've been able to do is really open up this channel quite a bit. This is the updated Marine Safety Information Bulletin issued on April 25th. A couple of just key revisions here. They opened the channel for essential vessels on Thursday, April 25th at 8 a.m. until Monday, April 29th at 6 a.m. The reason they're shutting the channel back down again is to do work on the Dali. The channel will have a controlling depth. This is a change in what they had to 38 feet. Initially, they listed 35, but it's 38, meaning you can get 35-foot draft vessels through there. You've got a 300-foot horizontal clearance. In other words, the channel is 300 feet wide. A vertical clearance of 214 feet. Those are due to the power lines that are strung across on the west side of the bridge. And then deep draft vessels will require a Maryland State pilot and 2 escort tugs, one forward, one astern, on the center line. The Maryland pilots have imposed a 3-foot under clearance requirement for all vessels, and transits are limited to periods of less than 15 knots of wind. Now, due to the proximity of the Dali and the effects of passing vessels, all transits will be at less than 5 knots, and vessels greater than 60,000 tons of displacement will not allowed to be transited. Vessels less than 50,000 tons will be allowed to transit, and vessels between that will be on a case-by-case basis. The Fort Carroll temporary alternative channel with a controlling depth of 20 feet will remain available. Additionally, the Solars Point temporary alternative channel with a controlling depth of 11 feet, as well as the Hawkins Point temporary alternative channel with a depth of 14 feet, will also be available. There is still a 2,000-yard safety zone around the bridge that remains in effect, and you will have to coordinate with the captain of the port. This is the image of the channel as provided by Unified Command. I don't know why they don't have a clearer image of it. Don't ask me. It's what was provided by Unified Command. So you'll see the 4 channels here. Solars Point, this was the initial channel that was opened. And notice it goes under one of the spans of the bridge that is still standing. So that is why you have a air draft limitation there. The Hawkins Point also goes under one of the southern spans. And then you have the Fort Carroll channel. This one goes in a clear space just to the north of the pillar that's in the water. And then now we have, here's the Federal channel. This is the limited access channel right here. It's on the northern side of the channel away from Dali, and it's 300 feet wide. This is marine traffic showing you the movements in and around the bridge. You'll notice right here, this is Dali on the channel. Here's the bridge structure. Notice all the traffic moving in and around. These are tugs and barges moving around. These are all the craft moving in and around the bridge. This is 25 April, about 12, almost 1300 UTC time. 5-hour difference between UTC and the United States. We're 5 hours behind UTC. So this is early in the morning of 25 April. And you get the impression here of all the traffic that is going on. If you notice up here in the north, here comes Balsa 94. This is the first vessel that is going to be coming out here of the channel. This is the reopening that's taking place. And we're going to go ahead and zoom in here, give you a little better view. Also going to shift over here to our nautical chart. This is all from marine traffic, provides some great access. So here's Balsa 94. On the bow is the April Moran. On the stern is the Lynn Moran. And these are the vessels coming down. And you'll see them coming down. I'm going to put up their speeds too so you can see it right there. Coming through at about 4.5 knots coming through. So really taking their time coming through the channel. April Moran is actually backing down. This is a tractor tug. So this is not a very easy maneuver, I will tell you, for ships to do. So this is a still taken from Unified Command. Here is Balsa 94 coming down. Here you see April Moran and Lynn Moran, one on the bow, one on the stern. You can see the vessel backing down. Believe it or not, we don't like to do this all the time with tugs for obvious reasons. Should something happen, being in that forward position in particularly is a really precarious one. I don't think we give tug operators enough credit for what they are doing here. Should something happen, should there be an incident, all of a sudden you have this vessel barreling down on top of you. At the same time, being pulled by a ship on a tug is also a dangerous position if the tug goes sideways or anything, because of series of accidents that have befallen tugs and have resulted in the deaths of tugboat operators on board. But for right now, because of the narrowness of this channel and because they don't want to take any potential problems, they are hooking tugs up. The other thing to note here is the difference in size between these two vessels. I can't push this enough. The difference between what you're seeing here with Balsa 94 versus the Dali. And again, I'm going to emphasize this again. Dali is a big ship. But Dali is about half the size of some of the container ships that are going around the world today. Dali has a capacity for about 10,000 TEUs. Ever Given, that got stuck in the Suez, had a capacity of 20,000 TEUs. The largest ones out there today are 24,000 TEUs. And basically, the biggest ones that come in and out of U.S. ports are roughly around 16,000 TEUs. So, this gives you the idea of the scope and scale of what we're talking about here. It's going back here. Here's Balsa 94 coming out on the other side. We're going to speed this up a little bit here. She comes out. Once she's past the bridge, she drops off her tugs, and she is clear now and heading down the Patapsco Channel. Now, all of a sudden, you'll see work resume in and around the bridge. A lot of movement, obviously, tugs and barges moving scrap metal and debris from in and around the area. You'll notice Coast Guard cutters in and around the area. Those are the CG boats. You'll notice designated boats running in and out all the time. There's some movement over here in and around the Sparrows Point facility. This is Trade Point Atlantic with vessels moving in and around. So here comes the next vessel out. This is the Dutch vessel, the Sam Garat. You'll see Lynn Moran on the bow here and another Moran tug on the stern. We're going to go ahead and zoom in here too. I'm going to go ahead and shift over to our chart so we can see it here as the ship comes down the channel. Again, doing less than 5 knots. As it comes through, it's hugging the very northeastern side of the channel, as far from away from the Dali as they can get, while at the same time taking them out. So they've got the Lynn Moran, they've got the Fells Point on the hip there, and another tug, the April Moran, there on the stern. And they will let the Samarak go, and the tugs will head back once again. And they're going to continue doing this during the day. The next vessel that'll be coming off, both Balsa 94 and Samarat were cargo vessels, very small little cargo vessels. Next one you're going to see coming off here is Carmen. This is a car carrier. And car carriers are a really big one. We have car carriers coming in here to Trade Point, but over here at Dundalk, we have a large car carrier facility. Carmen's going to follow a route very similar to what happened with Dali on her exit, get into that Fort McHenry channel. I'm going to pause it there. We're going to go ahead and just zoom in here a bit. I'm going to leave it as this image here so you can get a better image of the Carmen as she comes through. I mean, just look at the amount of vessels in and around the area. You get the idea of the coordination that Unified Command has to do to be able to move vessels through this region. And as she comes through, she will once again come out on the other side. She'll lose her tugs almost immediately on the other side as she's in the Patapsco and heading out for the Bay Bridge. And tugs will once again reposition. The fourth vessel that's going to come out is going to be a Thai bulk carrier that is right here. That's the Patra Nari. You'll see her right here, really close, literally within eye shot of the Dali. Fells Point will be there along with April and Lynn Moran. Again, they're using the same tugs, probably using the same pilot, I would envision, doing this so that they have the background and knowledge of what to do. She is going to be backed out of the slip here, very close to the stern of Dali. She'll be backed into the channel, and then once clear, they'll go ahead and get her set and then run the vessel through the channel and back out of the port. So 4 vessels out of the port of Baltimore, a big significant event for the port. So vessels did not just leave the port of Baltimore, but we also had vessels come in. So I've jumped ahead here to roughly 03:45 on 26 April. So this is evening of 25 April, and the Frisian Ocean is coming in escorted by April and Lynn Moran. This is a small Dutch freighter coming in and out of the port. She will be followed a few hours later by a tanker. So last thing I want to talk about is this story that came out about the FBI opening up a criminal probe into the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Now, I commented on social media about this, and I kind of disagree with the concept of the FBI running an investigation concurrently with the NTSB. Got a little bit of flack for some people, but let me explain a couple of things. NTSB is doing an investigation to determine the cause of the incident, and as such, they have, through port state agreements and other agreements that are in place with the nation of Singapore, in particularly, which is the flag state here, they have agreements so that the crews basically have to speak. They have to talk and discuss and provide evidence for it. FBI coming on board creates a criminal issue. They're investigating based on the death of the 6 workers on the bridge. Now, that means that the employees on board the vessels have certain rights to not incriminate themselves. Even though they're on board a Singapore vessel, they're within U.S. waters, the FBI is questioning them, you start creating issues that are going to prevent the free flow of information. Not that information is always free flowing in these events, I know that, believe me. But the NTSB is conducting the primary investigation. And should the NTSB determine that there is a criminal matter, then they should be in a position to go to the Department of Justice and initiate a criminal investigation. You should not, in my opinion, be running these concurrently. I'm not sure what they do in aviation. I'm sure Juan Brown and those who do the NTSB investigation on the aviation side are better at that. But this on the maritime side is a bit of an issue too, because you're dealing with Indian nationals, that's the large members of the crew that are on board a Singapore flag vessel. Now, I was just at an event where I spoke about social media in maritime. And one of the people who came and spoke was the Deputy Secretary General of the Singapore Registry. And he had been up on Dali that morning, or the day previously, talking to the crew. And the crew noted a couple of key things. Number one, when the FBI boarded the vessel, they basically went into everyone's rooms and began to flip search them. Just went in, even when crew members were sleeping. They didn't have the crew muster. They didn't have the crew report. They just basically banged on the door, went in, and started doing it. This is from the report of the Singapore deputy agent for the registry. They also said that all the ship's crew's cell phones were confiscated. Now, let me be clear. On a ship, a cell phone is your connection to the outside world. One of the benefits this crew has is that they're able to stay in touch with their loved ones via their cell phones. Well, they were all taken off the vessel. So now this crew is completely unattached or out of communication with family members. I mean, the FBI could have cloned these phones. They could have done whatever they needed to, but they should return them back to them as soon as they can. Second, this crew is restricted to the ship. They do not, under their visas, have permission to go ashore for shore leave, to get off the boat. This crew, for whatever we want to talk about happened here, has suffered a tremendous trauma. They are, in a way, indirectly responsible for the death of 6 people. We don't know what the cause of this accident was yet. We don't know which crew members may have had a role to play in this, but there are certain crew members who had no role to play whatsoever, guaranteed. And yet here they are restricted to the ship. Can't even get ashore into the port to just get off the vessel for a short period of time. And I think we should think about that. One of the things. The other element that's going to need to be talked about soon is crew repatriation, is crew changes. How long is this crew going to remain on board? Now, if there's an investigation going on, if there is culpability, obviously those crew members should not be allowed to leave. However, certain crew members lower down in the ranks who don't have command decisions and whose role is probably very minimal here, there's probably no reason to keep them on board. And one of the things I think we get into here is how do we start treating these crew members on board? Because again, they have suffered a massive trauma, nowhere near compared to the loss the family members have suffered. But for 4 minutes, that crew suffered the worst feelings of their lives. Now, this could have been an accident in which there's no responsibility among the crew at all. It could be the fault of a crew member, a mechanical or human error. Either way, the NTSB should be getting to the heart of this matter. But this ship is going to get freed here by next month. By May, we're going to see the ship out. It's going to be dockside somewhere. It's going to have to be repaired, and then the vessel will be able to sail unless the Port of Baltimore and the state of Maryland arrests it, which I think is going to happen, and the ship's not allowed to leave, in which case you got to deal with the crew on board. You want to treat the crew as fairly as you can. And that means providing them back with their connections to their families via their cell phones, at the very least, in my opinion. The ships coming out of Baltimore right now are not as big as the Dali, for example, so you're not going to get the big container ships in. And there's two large coal carriers that are still stuck in the port of Baltimore that cannot get out. This does mean, however, that the four strategic sea lift vessels that are in the harbor can now get out. They all have drafts less than 35 feet so that they can get out should there be an emergency. But right now, the port has reclosed the channel because they're working on the removal of this section of the bridge off the Dali. They got to get the roadway off. And then let's not forget, the reason you have the 35-foot draft through the channel is because you remove the trestle feature here, or excuse me, the truss feature here of the bridge, but down below the water here is still the roadway. The concrete steel roadway is still lying on the bottom. All of that has got to be pounded, clawed, and removed from the bottom so that you can get back down to 50-foot draft. You've got to get all the metal so you can dredge out of there. So there's still a long, laborious process here. But right now what they're going to be doing is removing Dali next, get it out, continue the dredging of the channel to get down to 50 feet and cleaning out the areas while also removing the bridges and roadway sections from the other side. And let's not forget, too, always critical to remember that during this process of removal of wreckage, they're still searching for the remains of the two workers who are still missing. So that's my update for you on the situation in Baltimore. I've got a What the Ship in the can coming your way. I apologize, been really busy. I've not been able to sit down and do one of my half-hour long, 5 stories. There's just been so much going on. But my aim is to get that done, especially now at the end of the semester here at Campbell University. And once I get final grades in, it's summer break. Can't wait. Like, I don't have a summer break. I got a lot to do. So, hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do it? Hit that super thanks button down below, or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Until our next video, Sal, signing off.